Today I wanted to do something that I have never done before on this channel, and that is rank every single book I've ever read. I'm not going to rank every book I've ever read, like the books I read as a kid. Goodnight Moon, Corduroy, the Magic Treehouse books, and Goosebumps, Hank the Cowdog, Hatchet. And I'm not even going to rank the books I read in high school, like Fahrenheit 451 or Brave New World. When I was in junior high and high school and college, I just wanted to play basketball, work out, and play Call of Duty. I did not really care to read. I want the books that I'm ranking today be the books that I've read as an adult, the ones where I can recall and remember, whether I enjoyed them or not. Wow, that is bright. How's that look? So grab a cup of coffee, maybe a pot of coffee, maybe some tea, maybe something to nibble on, because this is going to be a long video. So strap in, snuggle in, and let's get started. All right, mind frame, how's that look? Before we get started, I feel like I have to state this. Please don't be mad or offended if you see a book on this table that is ranked in a spot that you don't want. We are all different readers. We all have different likes and dislikes when it comes to books and the stories we want to read. We are all on different reading journeys. A book may enter my life at the right exact time, the right season of life, and it may stick with me and hit me right in the soul. Other times I may read a book that I'm not liking. I'm not in the headspace for. Maybe at that particular time, that book I just wasn't ready for. Maybe I didn't like it then, but I could always give it a shot another time. Give it a second chance. So I say all that because I'm not ranking these books definitively. I'm not ranking them solely on the story or the characters or how it's written. There's so much more that goes into a book than just what's on the page. When I rank these, I'm considering my experience reading them, the journey that I had reading it, how I felt, what resonated with me, or what didn't land with me, what I didn't connect with. How are we going to rank these books? Well, I'm thinking 4 categories. All time. All-timers. I don't even know if you can read that because of how the camera and lighting is exposed, but this is for my reference. I'll put titles up here. You'll see. These are the books that will stay with me forever. These books will be impossible to forget because, as cheesy as it sounds, these books are a part of me. They live in my soul. Second category, memorable. These are the books that are better than good. And they're just a step below all-timers. These books will be hard to forget. And third category, good reads. These books were good, not great, not bad. They were fun. They were worth my time. The last category, I don't know what to title. My wife made a joke this morning because I asked her, what should the 4th category be titled? And she said, stinkers. So maybe we could do that? Yeah, let's just do that. Let's just have fun. These are the books that I don't really care for. I didn't like. I didn't really connect with them. I didn't enjoy my time with them. And maybe I didn't even finish them. I'm going to do my best in presenting these books in a chronological order from where I first started reading to now. 2 books I remember starting off as an adult. I read The Road when I was 21 in college. At the time, I liked it. It was a good read. But a couple weeks ago, I read it as a 31-year-old. So The Road by Cormac McCarthy goes into the memorable section. Another book, The Hobbit. I remember reading that maybe 2018, 2019. I didn't have much to compare it to. And I know you shouldn't be reading to compare things all the time, but when you don't have a frame of reference and you're reading something and you have nothing really to compare it with or contrast it with, this wasn't an all-timer. I don't even think it was memorable, but it wasn't bad. So, The Hobbit goes into the Goodreads. With having read books pretty consistently for the past 4 or 5 years, I feel like if I come back to The Hobbit, it'll climb up a little bit. I will never forget the time I was gifted the entire Harry Potter series for Christmas. Oh my gosh, come to think of it, chronologically, I read the Chronicles of Narnia a few months before being gifted Harry Potter. So actually, I would put that entire series probably into the Goodreads section. So I don't have it physically, so it would go right here. Wasn't memorable, wasn't an all-timer. I just felt like I went through the motions. Still didn't really care to fully read and really metabolize what I was reading. I wasn't reading to feel, I was just kind of reading to read. A lot of folks grew up with Chronicles of Narnia and Harry Potter. I was late to the Harry Potter show, but that does not change how I felt about it. I read the first 2 books in about a week. Ate them up, loved them, cried, laughed, smiled, felt like a kid again. The first 2 books of Harry Potter is going to go into the memorable section. It'll be hard to forget how I felt reading these books, how I connected with the characters and the friendships, the hardships, the lessons these characters learned, and the adverse circumstances they had to go through and how they overcame them. Then I slowed down my reading with the 3rd book. I don't know if life got in the way or what, but I didn't eat this book up like I ate these 2 up. However, I loved this book when I finished it. This is in the memorable section. Watching the movie after finishing the book and realizing just how much better the book was compared to the movie. Then along came my favorite book of all time, Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. If you've followed this channel long enough, you will know I probably mention that book at least once every single video. It changed how I looked at books and looked at words. It really allowed me to appreciate books and writing and stories and how they were told. The moment I finished Name of the Wind, I approached reading in a whole new light, with a whole new attitude and perspective. Same goes for the 2nd book, Wise Man's Fear. Loved every bit of it. And both of these will go into the all-timer section. I just remembered I read a series of unfortunate events. I read the first 2 books. I think my girlfriend at the time was telling me about them because she grew up with them. I remember ripping through the first 2 books and then realizing, is this what it's going to be? The entire series is going to be this unfortunate? You're going to make me think these kids are going to get out of it and win and succeed, but they fail every time? I don't want to read that. I would say the first book would go here in Goodreads, but the 2nd book, the stinker pile. After reading Name of the Wind and Wise Man's Fear, I wanted every single book by Patrick Rothfuss. Little did I know, he's only written 2 books and a novella, The Slow Regard of Silent Things. Talk about a book not made for the masses. This is a very intimate book about one gentle character. It's very tender. This was a good read. Up next is going to be Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. I do not own the copy of it because I gave it away. This is going to be a hot take, everyone. Mistborn is going in the stinker pile. I did not enjoy it. Well, I enjoyed the beginning of it. The concept of it was so cool. It was very video gamey. It reminded me of Dishonored, the video game where you're a thief and an assassin. You have these superpowers and you're sneaky, and the art direction reminded me of that too. But everything was hollow. Everything felt like a cardboard cutout. I wanted things to stick with me and stay with me. But everyone felt like vessels for exposition. And I have my review of it. You can watch that if you want. And I know a lot of people call me pretentious and call me a hipster and broccoli head and whatnot, but you know what? We are allowed to love books. We're allowed to not like books. What matters is the conversation around them. If we are able to have a conversation around a book, whether we have differing opinions, that's what matters. I want to be able to talk to someone who loves Mistborn, and I want to share my thoughts, and I want to hear their thoughts. Share a cup of coffee, and just hang out. We don't need to fight. And then I believe at the time, I started playing Witcher 3, one of my favorite games of all time. And I decided to read the first 2 short story collections of the Witcher books. Going back to Mistborn, and even going back to Name of the Wind, I was at a crossroads in my reading journey at this point. The moment I finished Name of the Wind and Wise Man's Fear and Slow Regard of Silent Things, I compared every single book afterwards to Patrick Rothfuss. I fully felt that no one can write like him. It was hard not to compare and contrast because I was so enveloped and lost and in love with the lyrical and rhythmic writing of Patrick Rothfuss. And I know that tainted my experience with many books, even Mistborn. Same thing with these. But I enjoyed them. I enjoyed the layers and depth of Sapkowski's writing. There was always a layer beneath the surface, and then another layer, and another. There was always a twist after the twist, and it never felt forced. The fact that this was translated to English might have added a little more difficulty in enjoying these books. But nonetheless, I enjoyed them. These will go into the good reads section. And then at this time, I wanted to do it. I wanted to take the leap, the dive into a 14-book series, Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. I'll never forget the time I started Wheel of Time. At the time, I had a rambunctious roommate. We shared a wall together. He was quite loud. It was raining that night, and I decided to go to my car with a little lamp, a little light, a little blanket, cracking open Eye of the World, while the gentle pitter-patter of the rain on the roof of my car. Never forget that. Then the next day, my pacemaker failed. I have a pacemaker right here. Well, used to. Now it's right here. The next day it failed, and I had to get rushed to the hospital. My girlfriend at the time, now my wife, drove me. Stayed with me for an entire week at UCLA Hospital while I had to get this surgery. All the while, I was diving into the world of Wheel of Time. This book is an all-timer for me because of the memories surrounding it, what was happening in my life at the time, but also I'm a sucker for beginnings of a grand and epic journey. Eye of the World, all-timer. The next 2 books, The Great Hunt and The Dragon Reborn, memorable because they were building upon the foundation of book 1, slowly expanding the world of Wheel of Time and the characters and the concepts. It's unlike anything I've ever read. You've got the modern works of Name of the Wind and maybe some of the simplicity of Harry Potter. And now you've got classic fantasy in the 90s. Yes, clearly inspired by Tolkien and Lord of the Rings, but wow. So good. I forgot to finish ranking Harry Potter. I just completely skipped that. Remember I was talking about comparing everything to Patrick Rothfuss in Name of the Wind. Returning to Harry Potter after Name of the Wind and Wise Man's Fear. That was tough. Because any book after the fact, any book after Name of the Wind, it was hard to get lost in the text and immersed in the story and appreciate someone else, a different author. Sadly, reading Patrick Rothfuss in the midst of Harry Potter definitely tainted my experience with Harry Potter. Goblet of Fire, memorable. Well, no, I'll say Goblet of Fire, good. These were good. Order of the Phoenix, I remember connecting with much more than these others. Order of the Phoenix goes into memorable. I really connected with Harry Potter in that book. I remembered what it felt like to be in his position at that age, feeling the feelings he was feeling. Hope you have a nice cup of coffee, maybe another cup of coffee, maybe a pot of coffee, because I'm not even close to being done. I have so many more books to get through. If you've made it this far in the video, I really appreciate it. I don't want to just throw in a book on a pile without telling you a story, giving you my reasons why it's here. I remember after finishing book 3 of Wheel of Time, Patrick Rothfuss was like, hey, I'm going to make another novella. The Narrow Road Between Desires. No one writes like Patrick Rothfuss. He is truly a master of the English language. This was a good book. This was memorable. How the story is so mundane and intimate. Not epic or expansive like Wheel of Time. All right, back to Wheel of Time. Okay, books 4, 5, and 6 go into the good pile. Books 4 through 6 were still good. They weren't bad. They weren't great. They had great moments. But to me, it was a lot of names, a lot of lore. It felt like an entryway to a house that never ended. I never got into the house. I wanted to get to the kitchen. I wanted to have a meal with the family that lived in that house, but I just kept getting names and names and names and people and this and that and a lot of proper nouns. Oh. But I think of book 5, actually. Book 5, The ending of book 5. Memorable. Yep, I'm okay with that. That makes sense to me. We have the quote-unquote slog. Books 7, 8, and 9. Everyone in the Wheel of Time community says books 7 through 10 is a slog. For me, no. These were some of my favorite books in the series because I could just live in the world. I didn't have to learn a whole lot more. It was a lot slower and more methodically paced than the other books. I was able to just sit in the quiet moments with Matt and Rand and Perrin, navigate the politics and the various ways of the world and how it was shifting. This is tough. 7, I know for a fact, is memorable because these books blend in more together. They all feel like one book. Right now, I'm going to go ahead and put them in memorable just because I remember how I felt. I remember enjoying them more. I remember being able to relax with the books. I know I spoke highly of the slog and how much I loved it. However, book 10, stinker. I felt like a summary or a synopsis would have been better. Book 11, Knife of Dreams, was the last book Robert Jordan wrote before he passed. When I was reading this, it was hard not to have that thought influence my feelings toward this book. I couldn't help thinking I was reading the last words of Robert Jordan within the Wheel of Time. It was sad when I closed this book. It was the calm before the storm. The gathering storm, that is, when Brandon Sanderson took the wheel and finished off one of the greatest fantasy series ever. I cried reading the introduction, the introductory letter that Brandon Sanderson wrote. I'm so thankful he took the reins and honored this series, honored Robert Jordan. Memorable, memorable. Books 12 and 13. Books 14 and book 1, all-timers. I love a good beginning and a good ending. These will stick with me forever. It was very interesting to read other books. Read books that weren't a part of an overarching series. Reading standalones. Things that could be finished from one cover to the other cover. It felt freeing to not be attached to a 14-book series. And I remember starting a new journey of reading with The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle. This is my favorite author's favorite book, Patrick Rothfuss's favorite book. He even wrote an introduction. You can tell how influential this book was for Rothfuss and his writing. I love this book so much. Though the story was short and sweet, the writing and lyricism will stick with me forever. All-timer. Something I forgot to mention. When I was reading Wheel of Time, I took a break after book 10. Or actually, maybe it was book 11. I wanted to take a break before reading Sanderson. Reading Sanderson's last 3 books in the series. So I took that break with Stephen King. For the first time, I dove into King's work with Misery. This is my favorite Stephen King book. No King book has ever made me feel so uncomfortable, so uneasy, so on edge. I also remember, I don't have the book with me. I remember reading Jaws. I thought I was going to get into more of a horror story with it being about a shark. But it was more about the shark's presence and how it impacted and changed the town. I did not like that book. That was a stinker. Pet Semetary, Salem's Lot by Stephen King. Because both these books were so well written, so well crafted and executed, I felt like. However, everyone talks about Stephen King and how scary he is, how demented his writing is. But I just didn't think these were as scary as I thought they would be. I really thought they were going to be something that would keep me up at night. And that expectation definitely influenced how I enjoyed these books. I enjoyed them. They were good, but I don't think they were quite as memorable as I wanted them to be. At the time, I thought that. A year's passed since reading these. The more I think about them, the more I am fond of them and look back on them with kind of like I miss them. I enjoyed my time with these books, you know? So right now, I'll keep them at the good reads section. They're kind of on the cusp. Memorable, good. Okay, got a lot of books here. Dungeon Crawler Carl. Pretty sure everyone and their grandma knows about this book. It's talked about all over on booktube. I read this after The Last Unicorn. This was such a treat. Fun, kind of popcorn book after the immense depth of Wheel of Time and that whole series. Good. Now, my wife is currently on book 6. Loves the series. It's all she's been reading. It's all she's been talking about. But for me, I just don't care to dive further in. While we were on a road trip, we did listen to the audiobook of this. I did not read this physically. My wife read this physically. I listened to it. That was my first experience with it. I believe there is a great difference in reading physically versus listening audio. Following the words and metabolizing the words versus listening to sounds and trying to pay attention that way and metabolize that way. This is going to be another hot take, and I have a video on this. I did not enjoy the audiobook of this. It was exhausting. And granted, the road trip that we were on was quite long. The surrounding area was quite drab and barren, so not much to look at, not much to be excited about. So with this exhaustive, high energy, non-stop noise of an audiobook playing for 5.5 hours at a time, there, back, I didn't connect with the story. But if I read it physically, I think I would resonate with it and enjoy it. So right now it's in the stinker pile, but that's because I'd like to give it another try. Maybe it can go back up here to good. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I also read this after Wheel of Time. This was not a stinker, but I did not finish this book because I don't think I was in the right mindset for it. I don't think the humor landed with me. I don't think I understood it. And I want to give this book another try. But for now, sadly, it's in the stinker pile. Another book I don't own anymore. It's a Stephen King book. I was in the mood for a murder mystery. The Outsider by Stephen King. I read that last August. It started so strong. I was so enticed and intrigued. But then it got into just this weird, telling, not showing, overtelling, and characters just wouldn't talk like that. So I didn't finish it. Stinker pile. Another Stephen King book that I think I gave away, Mr. Mercedes. That was a good book. Felt like a fun TV show of a book. Just a fun little murder mystery, crime thriller kind of thing. Fredrick Backman. And every morning, the way gets longer and longer. This was quite short. I read it in one sitting. This was good. Made me cry. But I feel like it's a book that I can reread again and again and get more from it. Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. A good friend of mine recommended the Farseer trilogy to me because she knew I loved Patrick Rothfuss, Name of the Wind, and Wise Man's Fear. If I loved those books, I would love this. And everyone on BookTube praises Robin Hobb for her character work and her writing style. And yes, this stuck the landing for me. Though it's been a few months since I've read this book, I look at this cover and I start thinking about the characters and the story, how everything was presented. This felt so human and tender. She really has a way of writing, and I absolutely adored Assassin's Apprentice. I'm going to go ahead and say right now, it's memorable. I feel like I need to get a little more of the picture, a little more of the journey and the life of Fitz chivalry before I can make my true ranking of it. It's going to be hard to forget this one. Another book that everyone talks about, especially now, with it being almost November, and the final book is almost out. This is book 1 of the Sun Eater series. Now, I heard of this because of Mike's book reviews, and I trust Mike, and I really appreciate Mike and his honesty and his way of being blunt and straightforward. I've never read sci-fi, and I feel like for me, it's a bit hard to get into sci-fi. It's not as familiar like fantasy is. You know, I know what a castle is and a tavern and what mountain ranges look like. But with sci-fi, it's tough to gauge what a spaceship looks like, what certain weapons look like, or how they sound or feel, what the environment looks like and how people live in it. I didn't like this book, sadly. It was hard to connect with the character, Hadrian. And I felt like there was a lot of proper nouns, a lot of big words. There wasn't that lyrical flow to words that I seek out and yearn for in books. I have heard this is the weakest of the series, but for now it's a stinker. I just haven't attempted to dive back in to Sun Eater. I hear great things about Howling Dark and Demon in White. I still hear great things about the series, and I haven't lost hope. I'm just tired of fantasy and sci-fi. And one of the last fantasy books I read this year was The Blacktongue Thief by Christopher Buehlman. What a fun book. Taking tropes, taking things that are familiar and just kind of twisting it here and there. Sprinkling a little change here and there. This was a good book. Good book. After that, I just said, I'm taking a break from fantasy. I don't want to have to learn a new world. I don't want to have to learn new words and names and magic systems and nations and family political lines and alliances. I just want to read a story. So I dove into straight fiction. Just fictional stories. Self-contained books that don't need a sequel or a third book or a 15th book to tell the story. Here's another Stephen King book. The first book he ever wrote. I was blown away by it. Again, how he presents a story, how he's able to do flash forwards, flashbacks, have you on the edge of your seat, giving you a little taste of what's to come with some foreshadowing. Good book. Oh, what's this? Another Stephen King book, The Body. I read this in June, July. Perfect summer book. Perfect coming-of-age story. Nothing scary, nothing spooky, but emotional and deep. And it hits hard. Good book. Then came a book that wasn't even on my radar. And thanks to Mike's book reviews, I just took the leap into a new author, into a new story. Boy's Life by Robert McCammon. First 2 pages, I was instantly pulled in. I didn't grow up in the 60s, but I did grow up. And I was once a child. This book is just so relatable. And so beautifully written and presented. This is tough, because when I finished this book, I felt like it was an all-timer. Especially when I was in the midst of the book, I felt like it was an all-timer. But when I look back on it, there are some things that I wish could have been done with the book, with the story. Parts of me wish it was longer. I wish I could have stayed in some of these moments with Corey and his friends. Right now, I'm going to just put it in memorable. It's going to be hard to forget this book with how I felt, with how it resonated with me and how I connected with it. The past few months have been wonderful with reading. Not reading this giant fantasy series and dealing with sequels and trilogies. It's nice to read books that are self-contained. And that's what I've been doing. Boy's Life and The Body and Carrie. And then I read All the Pretty Horses by Cormac McCarthy. This is an all-timer. This was a dark and lonely tale. Desolate. There was something ancient and primordial about Cormac's writing. There's a simplistic nature to his writing, yet there's so much beneath the surface that eats away at you. Forms knots in my stomach. When I put this down, I could not stop thinking about it. And I still constantly think about it. And I can't wait to read the second and third book, because apparently it is a trilogy. All-timer. True Grit by Charles Portis. This is a good book. A good, self-contained story. This is a revenge tale. It doesn't glorify revenge. There's so much more that goes into that whole aspect of life. Seeking out revenge. Especially in the Wild West. I wish it was longer. Although, I enjoyed my time with it. This was a good book. The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. Another fun and wonderful read. Something I didn't expect. I thought I was getting your classic, typical, tropey, scary book. Haunted house. Couple people in there. What could happen? This was more about the people. The conversations and dialogue between characters was just so... I could just sit there and listen to these characters talk and theorize and question what was going on in the house. This was a lot more than just a haunted house. This was more character-focused than just something spooky. What a wonderful book. This doesn't look like a whole lot of books. This could be someone's pile of books they read in a month or a year. But for me, it's the last 5 or 6 years. I really like to be intentional and methodical with what I choose to read and how I read. I like to take my time and really lose myself in the text and in the words and in the story. These are all the books that I've read in my adult life. And if you haven't heard already, I am currently reading Lonesome Dove. I'm only 7 chapters in. And I can already tell this is going to be an all-timer for me. If this book was only 10 chapters, this would be right up there with All the Pretty Horses. These characters are so real. How they talk to each other, how they're presented, and how you learn little bits about them and their backstory. It's so fully realized and so human. I would love to reserve my judgment right now. I would love to just hold off, but I can't. Every time I'm like 50 to 100 pages into a book, I tell my wife, this book's so amazing. This is an all-timer for me. And my wife says, you say that about every book. But this is different. I'm going to predict this is going to be an all-timer. We won't put it there yet. Thank you for hanging out with me this long. If you've made it this far, I appreciate you. I hope this was fun. What are some of your favorite books that you've read in your life? Some of your all-time favorites? And what are your stinkers? Maybe what are some of the good books that you like? Maybe some of the memorable books. You don't have to give me your full list. Maybe share a few here and there. Again, thank you for taking time out of your day to spend time with me. Until next time, cheers.